Wald is he is probably one of the strongest proponents of what Stan calls common sense conservatism that I've ever stumbled across, and he happened to have been a former Marxist. So I can't wait to hear from him. But he touches on all the free speech issues that Angelina was just raising, and hopefully we'll hear more from Tucker coming forward.
Yeah, I just want people to know if you want to call in, it's 888-329-3306. That's 888-329.
Delinquencies, it's lots of tech layoffs. They have a unique bad problem in the Bay Area, but what the regulators did made it worse. Actually, they should just let these big banks fail. So we did not learn anything for 2008.
Go ahead, Alan.
Well, Robert, it's Colonel Alan West. I want to ask you a couple of questions. When you talk about the economy, we just had our last quarter's GDP come out at 1.1%, which is quite abysmal when you think about we were clicking at 5 to 6% GDP
Absolutely.
when the administration comes in. Now you look at that and you look at $32 trillion of debt. Our debt to GDP ratio is close to, I think, 130, maybe 132%. Are we past the red line for the debt to GDP ratio? Because I don't think you can sustain that.
Colonel West, you're absolutely right, and great to talk with you again. Yeah, I think Lehman Brothers failed at 35 to 1, and now we're operating 130 plus to 1. No, we really have to do something. In a practical sense, it impacts how much we spend on interest. And now interest is it is the largest expenditure, 1.2 trillion. That crowds out everything else. We need to be actually paying down debt and reducing that ratio of debt to GDP.
No, you're absolutely right. And then the other thing is, I don't know if people are talking about how the Federal Reserve and all these interest rates increases, because you can't go from 0 to 5.25% and not have some collateral damage. And I think that's what you see happening with a lot of these regional banks, the Signature, the Silicon Valley, and also this First Republic Bank. They can't keep up with these interest rates. Now, the big banks can, because they have the assets and the deposits, but they're just sucking these guys up. So do you think we're going to see more of these small regional bank failures?
Well, actually, there are two other things that are coming along online. The inflation is starting to hammer consumers' ability to repay debt. So those that are in consumer debt might have some trouble later. But I'm hoping, that inflation, even though it came out at like 4.9% today from year over year, which is still ridiculously high.
Yeah,
that's on top of 50. We've basically had a 15% erosion of purchasing power since Biden's administration. So that's been a bigger.
I'm going to just interrupt you because Bob, let me just point this out. The thing about those numbers are, for the individuals, they're much different than that. For example, if you're a working person, have to buy gas and have to buy food, your inflation rate is probably close to 15%, even higher. So
that's right, in housing in particular, right? If your housing costs have gone up.
So there are costs in there that the average American has to pay every day. And so your individual, you have to take a look at your own individual inflation rate before you start talking about what this government.
Yeah, how much was the Geno steak that you said?
Yeah, it was like 5 years ago, it was like $4. It was $14 today when we stopped there. I'm going, holy cow, that's a Geno steak. They still put meat in it, by the way, and cheese. So
How do you know?
Well,
how do you know it's not lab meat?
That's because DJ choked on it when I gave it to him out here. So that's why I know there was
That's
meat.
not a good advertisement.
Well, it was so good he was trying to chew it all up, and there was so much meat in it that he started choking. So in any event, but I know, let me bring in Professor Michael Rectenwald and his wonderful book, Great Reset, because I know he's probably chomping at the bit to respond to Alan and to Robert. So, Michael, welcome to the show. Andy?
Well, we already introduced you, Michael. I don't know if you were on the phone or not, but the thing that struck me in your bio is your former Marxist roots. And after having read The Great Reset and watched some of your speeches, I would say you're not only a full convert, but you are a proselytizer of the of conservatism that we need dozens more like you.
Common sense conservatism.
Common sense conservatism, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would say I'm more of a libertarian with culturally conservative values. I just think that the free market, when implemented, as fully as possible, really is best sustained by cultural conservatism, and actually it fosters the same too, because it really depends on the family as the main social unit, and that's how wealth is retained and passed on, and it's how it's generated, and so yeah, that makes me a libertarian with culturally conservative values.
Can you tell us what the premise of the book, The Great Reset, is? I think everyone sitting at this table and many of our listeners already have a feel for it, but a little bit of history about the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and some of that might help for some of those who haven't yet caught on to what's actually happening.
Yeah, so the book is called The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda. So what I'm looking at are the various spokes of this very complicated, vast wheel called the Great Reset, and that includes the economic model that they are trying to establish throughout the world, called stakeholder capitalism. and it includes the technologies that they have implemented and intend to implement through the Fourth Industrial Revolution, as it's called. And it also includes, I believe, a population reduction prong, which is meant to draw down the population and with the intent of bringing down consumption in the Western world. So this really speaks to some of the things that are going on, because I think that there is a concerted effort to actually reduce the standard of living in the developed world in order to achieve so-called sustainability. And this is why you see the attacks on the oil industry, and I believe also the attacks on our way of life in terms of our economic viability. And it could explain, in fact, why we're seeing such dramatic economic downturn here under the Biden administration with his, now buried Build Back Better plan.
Yeah.
So,
Michael, let me ask you this question, and it has to do with, do you believe, for example, they still talking about low unemployment and everything else. I just don't believe these unemployment figures that are coming out, only because we're allowing, thousands of people to come into this country every day. We've got layoffs in the tech industry all over the place. We're getting layoffs in the auto industry because no one wants to buy the electric cars. I just cannot believe that the unemployment numbers are where they are. And so any of these numbers that we get, I can't believe. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I think COVID really exacerbated all employment conditions, and in fact, drove a lot of people permanently out of the employment market. So those people aren't counted either. So I think we're looking at a catastrophic unemployment scenario in the near future because of these major layoffs and the inflation and just the difficulty in turning a profit under these conditions is going to make it very, very difficult terrain for employment prospects.
One of the things that bothers me, and the Colonel and I were talking about it on the way into the studio today, and that's affected. I've never seen so many stupid, dumb people out there. Intelligent, dumb people out there, smart, dumb people, and that when you think about it, you wouldn't have cell phones, you wouldn't have any of the economies that we have, the great products that we have on the market, without this movement toward creating some kind of better life, this competition, this level of private investments to create new ideas and everything else like that. So if all this happens, we're going to go back into caveman days, basically, is what you're almost talking about. That's how dire it could be.
More like slavery.
Well, slavery, yeah. Well, not much.
Both, actually. I think we're looking at kind of like, very reduced economic prospects for the vast majority. And very little prospects for upward mobility. This is the kind of static economic order that this stakeholder capitalism would bring about, because it invests all of its capital towards these so-called sustainability oriented or implicit or compliant companies, and basically starves the rest out of capital. It's a kind of a monopoly scheme, which sets up a kind of feudal system, actually.
Kind of like a George Orwell. For those young people out there listening who don't have this book in their library, the 1984 George Orwell book. And just to tell people out there, if you haven't read it, you should.
They're rewriting it.
Yeah, they're definitely rewriting it.
We're living it.
Yeah, where the animals, the pigs decided to get the animals all together and throw the farmers off the farm.
That's that's the Animal Farm.
I mean, excuse me.
You said 1984.
I meant to say,
Yeah.
same author. I just got confused in the titles. This
Yes.
is what happens when you're doing.
They're rewriting.
But this is why I have you here.
Of course.
You're my lawyer. You
He's a
straighten me out.
fact-checker.
I'm sitting to your
You're
right.
my backup.
And when they come to arrest us, I'll bail you
As a
out.
matter of fact, the reason why I said that, I wanted to see if you were up to date.
Thank you.
So
Well,
that's
it's
why
not
I'm doing it.
1984. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, good. It's yeah. So anyhow, Animal Farm, in which the pigs at the end who started everything, they were still in the farmer's house eating great and everything else like that, and the poor animals were out there looking in the window with the same
Well,
stuff that
you
they were
know, the
existing.
famous saying is some animals are more equal than others.
Yes.
But I think you hit it right on the nail. I mean, this every movement that's being orchestrated, that someone is screaming uncontrollably and banging a drum too loudly, it's orchestrated. There's a puppet master. It's if your movement is um, if your movement is promoted by the media, then you're not struggling. It is a constructed false narrative, and you are a useful idiot. We saw it with some aspects of the women's lib movement. We're seeing it with BLM, and now we're going to see it again with sustainability, smart, green, anything that's going to make you feel good and help you virtue
Yeah,
signal.
they sugarcoat the turds by stealing the words, and they misappropriate language. So, Michael, when I confront my friends who are less informed, whether they're liberal or they could be old school Democrat, where they still love the premise of the country and they don't realize what they're supporting, and they say, "Well, who's doing this to us? Who are they? Who are the them?" I think your book answers that question. Can you share with us who they are?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, so look at the World Economic Forum as kind of coordinating body who is signing onto its stakeholder capitalism thousands of corporate partners who are enacting its policies through the ESG index, for example. So there's the WEF has 1,000 corporate partners. They're the leading corporations in all the industries all across the world, including China, and they are driving this stakeholder regime, which is so we're talking about Schwab as kind of like the coordinating element there, bringing all these corporate partners together. So you have the leading asset manager in the world, for example, BlackRock Inc., headed by Larry Fink, driving the tip of the spear of this stakeholder regime, and they're bringing this home. They're bringing it home through investments, and this is how capital is allocated now on these terms, on these conditions of sustainability, and it is going to drive up the cost of everything. It is going to distort the market. It is going to create monopolies. It's going to drive small businesses out of business, and it will create this kind of woke cartel on top with the state, in conjunction with the state on top, in collusion, really, and leave the rest of us in a kind of actually existing socialism on the ground.
So you're listening to Michael Rechtenwald on the Don't Back Down show, the author of The Great Reset. And that book is available at www.michaelrechtenwald, that's MichaelRectenwald.com, michaelrechtenwald.com. It's also available at the other usual suspects like Amazon. But this book is well worth reading, and I can't more highly recommend anything I've read recently.
Hey, Michael, this is Alan West. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Alan. Good.
You know, we often hear that phrase that art seems to imitate life, but in this portion, it seems that life is imitating art. You know, I'm a big James Bond fan, and I remember, the old Spectre, this global organization that was out there trying to topple governments and everything like that. It sounds like this art is now becoming part of our life, and this guy Klaus Schwab reminds me of this Blofeld character. Maybe he's running around with a little white cat in his lap. I don't know, but this is this is something that it has really come to fruition. And can we have private citizens? I mean, when the government is telling you that you must invest part of your investment portfolio in these BlackRock, this green energy and stuff, can citizens say, no, that's not part of your jurisdiction. That's not part of our Constitution. We're not going to do it. And we can bring lawsuits and we can fight back against these people?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I have a 9-point plan in my book for turning all this back, for refusing this great reset, really. And that includes basically withdrawing all your money, all your investments from ESG, ESG index stocks, from ESG indexing banks, from putting pressure on our representatives to withdraw funds from the World Economic Forum. which is actually being funded by U.S. aid. And so we're funding this organization. I think we also should withdraw from the UN and also the World Health Organization.
I agree.
There are a lot of things we can do as individuals and families to push back against this, but we need to create parallel economic structures in order to survive the onslaught that we're going to be facing, because we're going to be forced into a CBDC any time now. And if you don't want to have your entire transactional history transparent to the Fed and likewise, therefore, the federal government, I think you better have an alternative currency on hand and people who are willing to accept it in your orbit. So that's what's necessary to evade all this.
Is that the big fear with the digital currency for the people in the centralized ideas of government, the Carl Schwabs? They don't want digital. They don't want the.
No, there's two kinds of digital currency. CBDC is central bank digital currency, and then there's the private.
The private one is
yeah.
what I'm talking about.
They don't want that. They're trying to get rid of that now, regulate it.
Yeah, they're trying to push the CBDC for sure. And that's coming all the way from the Bank of International Settlements, all the way down through all the central banks around the world. And the Fed is a latecomer, relatively speaking. China already has a digital yuan. So there's many countries that are already implementing and or piloting the digital currency. And this could be coming down the pike with the failure of all these regional and smaller mid-sized banks. We might see the possibility that the federal government, and in conjunction with the Fed, will effectively say, we have to do this now to stabilize the economy because all these banks are failing.
It's a Hegelian dialectic.
Exactly.
They're working on it right now. The Biden regime with the vice chair of the Fed, Michael Barr, who trained on social credit in China. He also brought us, the Barney Frank subprime disaster, but now he's working on the next disaster, which is social credit. But he's ramming it through with two other members of the Biden administration, Nellie Liang, who's Undersecretary of Finance and Treasury, and she leads the CBDC working group. They are trying to ram it through very fast. And then there's Michael Su, who's comptroller of the currency under Biden. All these Chinese. So they basically are trying to, West is definitely the specter, but we also have the Dr. No that's aligned with them. So Dr. No, the Chinese aligned with the global governments. The old UN types they were trying to tax that couldn't get any money. They had to kind of scrape and scrap and put this like carbon credit thing and this whole notion of taxing. They made money. They're making money off this artificial carbon credit system through ESG. And now China is like looking at that as a major operation to say, hey, we can sneak in on this with the Biden administration, right? Because, we basically own the Biden administration. We found that today with the, more bribery.
$10 million.
At least $10 million.
$10 million.
That's just the tip of the iceberg
that they can find.
$3 million from Romania from Gabriel Popoviciu. 5 weeks after the Romanian president visits the White House with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden present, they arranged this deal, this bribery, to get policy concessions from Joe Biden as vice president. So it's a slam dunk. The House Oversight Committee, where we brought in the Biden laptop report that had this stuff on the SARS. Now, thankfully, they're going for more subpoenas, and they found this other one with Romania, which is a bombshell.
Yeah, but this is just right-wing conspiracy, propaganda. You guys, don't you know that we've decreased the legal immigration by 90%? I mean, what's amazing to me is that when you look at the White House press, when you look at the White House press conference, what are you saying?
The 90% reduction. The 90% reduction is that nobody's applying for asylum. They're just
letting them in.
They're just letting them in. Exactly. But they're not even catching them. They're just releasing them. So their catch numbers are down.
The thing that I want to bring up to Robert and Michael is this. You got an incredible group of folks that are sitting here, and I'm just humbled that they will lower their standards and allow me to join them. But how do we get this message?
We'll pay you later after the show's over. So
you got your cheesesteak. How do we get this message out to everyday Americans? I mean, and we can't overload them with too much, because we've got an election coming. We're 18 months away from a presidential election. I think that this is a pivotal election which will determine the future of America, because tomorrow the sovereignty of the United States of America is done. I mean, we got to understand that. And the clock's ticking.
You're talking about the elimination of Title 42 and the complete opening of the southern border.
I mean, I've been getting reports still on my phone from my friends down there, and I was just down there a couple weeks ago for 4 days. But how do we get this information to people? How do we crystallize this so that we have better educated, voters out there, but so that we don't have what Stan is talking about, a bunch of really smart dumbasses. I don't know if I can say that on this air. I don't live
Let
here.
me find out if you can say dumbasses.
It's a 5-letter word. It's permitted.
I mean, they do say that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on the back of an ass, but maybe he was riding on Joe Biden. I don't know. But the bottom line is he's old enough he could have been there. But how do we get this out to people? Because this seems so everyday, common knowledge to us. But to the person that's getting on the bus down here in Southeast Philadelphia, just going to work every day,
where we were driving,
they're oblivious to this stuff. How can we do better?
Well, we need a media for one thing. We don't have that. So Dr. Michael Reckenwald.
I think that comes back to what you were saying.
Angela said, yeah. Angela said.
So how do we do better? How do we get this out? Because right now we're just chasing our tail.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is when you're standing from a point of conviction and you're speaking the truth, you just have to stay consistent with it. You can't let somebody tell you that you're wrong when you know that you're speaking the truth. And so I think it's really just sticking to your guns and being consistent as an individual. Then I think, there are people like Elon Musk, especially with the addition of the community notes on Twitter, so that if somebody does put information out there, the community can rally together and then correct it.
At least debate it in a public forum, for God's sake.
Or even present it.
Yeah, just get it out there so we can talk about it. But
without being shut down.
Yeah. Now, Alan has a podcast he's been doing for a year. He just did a little over a year. It's called Steadfast. And he's had great people on there for interviews and everything else like that. Maybe one day, Angelina, you, and me, and Andy will be on his show as a threesome, and we'll probably.
Are you trying to get yourself invited?
We'll increase it. We'll increase his ratings quite a bit, I'm sure.
There we go.
But those are the medias that we have to get. Of course, Tucker's coming up on Twitter, which would be pretty much he's going to be able to debate out there, throw that stuff out there. So people are looking to those alternative forms because in our gut, like Angelina said, we know this stuff is something's wrong. These are not true facts that we're getting.
I don't even watch the local news anymore. I just feel like they're trying to pump information that they want me to think about into my head without giving me an opportunity to hear what I need to know. And I go to alt media, I go to BitChute. I don't even use YouTube because they filter there as well. So, and it's just very hard. But you know what? I do like this part of it. I have been forced to use my own discernment and think my way through what I'm listening to, look for logic and reason. It's made me a better thinker. And after I got past the anger of not being able to trust anything, starting with the government and then going to the media.
But here's the little fly in the ointment is that you can't allow yourself to be framed in just one fashion of thought. You've got to experience and go out there. And that's why you and I disagreed the other day. And I went to this event to speak, because it's important for us to put our feet in all ends of the conversation. Because without that, then we're really not communicating. We're just staying in our own little sphere. So we always have to constantly reach out. That's what this show is about, is to reach out. Hopefully some people will tune in and do that. We'd love to get some people to come in who disagree with us, and let's get it on.
So I have to ask Dr. Rectenwald, and again, we're listening to Michael Rectenwald, the author of The Great Reset.
And Robert Bose.
And
Lieutenant Colonel Alan West.
And we're assuming everyone knows who Alan West is, and I think they do, but they may not realize
I identify as black.
You do? What are your pronouns? What are your pronouns?
Ussin. That's my pronoun. Ussin.
He's also the chairman of the Texas GOP.
I was. Yeah, I was.
Oh, I thought you still were.
Former chairman.
Oh,
because I ran for governor and I had to step down.
Previously a congressman.
Yeah, we won't start talking about Abbott right now. So
he's got quite the resume. But Dr. Rectenwald, you say it in your own bio. You are proud to say that you were a former Marxist. When did you make the transition to what you are now?
It started back in like 2016. 2014 when I was a professor at NYU, and
Oh my
had the
God,
woke mob.
NYU.
But now he's a
Holy-
professor at Hillsdale, so he's corrected himself.
Oh my God, that's 180 degrees.
Yes.
Holy cow.
And yeah, the woke mob came for me after I made some criticisms of the social justice fanaticism on campus, and that just opened my eyes. The scales dropped from my eyes, and I saw them for what they were, which is totalitarians.
Yeah.
And so I had to denounce the left entirely, and then I sought a political home, and I found myself more and more tending towards cultural and economic libertarianism. And that's effectively how that happened. I did a lot of research also to reorient myself. It was like coming out of Plato's cave. You know, I was completely scattered. So it took a while to get reoriented, but to see a lot of things that were hidden from me, really. So when we talk about what can wake people up, what woke me up was trauma, really. I was traumatized by the left, and that really shook me, and it forced me to rethink all of my own political commitments and ideology.
Well, I see your bibliography changed after that because you started with a book in 2018 called Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and Its Postmodern Parentage. You went on to...
I just love
It gets better. It gets better.
I gotta get that book.
Yeah, he went on
Springtime
to
for
Google.
Snowflakes.
Yes. Reminds me of the producer, Springtime for Hitler.
Right.
And then the Google Archipelago, the digital gulag and the simulation of freedom. Then he went to Thought Criminal in 2020, Beyond Woke in 2020, and now The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda. And again, I want to direct everybody to michaelrechtenwald.com, where you can get a copy of the book. And I personally got the autographed copy because this one, and I
got one too.
I got that for you, Stan. That was your birthday present.
That's right.
It was, and he autographed that for
I
you
know
too.
he did. Very proud of that.
Yeah.
By the way, we do have to take a quick commercial break here.
Dr. Reckin, will we stay with us?
So stay with us, and then we have some people on the phone. We have Sean from Queens, and we have Josh Prince, who's running for Commonwealth Court. So take it away, Mr. Producer.
Wondering what's in store for the spring real estate market? Diane Cardano Realtors here, and a lot has changed over the past year. And if you're planning to sell your home this spring, there are two things you should keep in mind. One, right now, homes that are competitively priced and strategically marketed shouldn't have a problem finding a buyer. With a smaller pool of buyers and more competition from other homes on the market, you may still need to adjust your price expectations. And two, buyers are still out there. Some buyers have left the market due to the rise in interest rates, but there are still plenty of reasons people are buying homes today. Higher mortgage rates will be a hurdle, but won't keep buyers on the sideline. So there's tons of opportunities in this spring market. If you're wondering if you should make that move, let's connect. I'll send you a free copy of my home selling book, listing my 8 secret strategies to sell your home for up to 10% more and fast, just in one day. Call 215-576-8666 or go to 215-576-8666.com.
Where people weren't quite sure what it was or playing with it on their phones. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about AI for a long time, since I was in college, really. It was one of the things that, the sort of 4 or 5 things I thought would really affect the future dramatically. It is fundamentally profound in that the smartest creatures, as far as we know, on this earth are humans, is our defining characteristic.
Yes.
We're obviously weaker than, say, chimpanzees, less agile, but we are smarter. So now what happens when something vastly smarter than the smartest person comes along in silicon form? It's very difficult to predict what will happen in that circumstance. It's called the singularity. It's a singularity like a black hole, because you don't know what happens after that. It's hard to predict. So I think we should be cautious with AI, and I think there should be some government oversight, because it affects it's a danger to the public. And so when you have things that are a danger to the public, like, let's say, so food and drugs. That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration, right, and the Federal Aviation Administration, the FCC, we have these agencies to oversee things that affect the public, where there could be public harm, and you don't want companies cutting corners on safety, and then having people suffer as a result. So that's why I've actually for a long time been a strong advocate of AI regulation.
All right, we're back with our guest, Robert Bose, Michael Rechtenwald, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. We have some callers out there. We've got our host, Angelina Banks, and Andy Titleman, and, of course, me, your fair-haired hero here in the Philadelphia area, bringing you this fun and games. So I wanted, Michael, real quick, let's talk about these roundtable groups. They're like the trilaterals. I remember Jimmy Carter was a member of the trilaterals, and the World Economic Forums we already touched on. There's a whole bunch of alphabet soup of these roundtable groups, and they all seem to be against us.
They're to them.
I mean, it's like they're all like the Dr. Evils of the world. And I'm trying to figure out, as I said, they just seem to be so smart but so dumb. I mean, have they not looked at history to show that where they're going creates huge human destruction? I mean, we've seen that with kings and queens who did the same thing, basically, centrally controlled monetary systems and everything else. You couldn't open anything unless the king got a piece of the action, something like that. It's like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, these roundtable groups, which started with the Royal Institute of International Affairs in 1920, continue with the Council of Foreign Relations, founded in 1921, continued further with the Bilderberg Group, founded in 1954, and then the Club of Rome, founded in 1968. Then we have the World Economic Forum, founded as the European Management Forum in 1971. And then 1973, we saw the founding of the Trilateral Commission. So all of these organizations have had one version of globalism or another on their agenda, and they have been pushing this for over 100 years. It has transmuted from trying to promote British imperialism at the outset to a kind of multilateral globalism, multilateral, multicultural globalism that they're pushing now. And but it's nevertheless imperialistic in the sense that they are elites that want to control everything. They have an elitist worldview that they are more suited to govern us than we are to govern ourselves. And they are more suited to tell us what to do, what to consume, how to have, what kind of production we should be allowed, etc. And
eventually leading to who can live and die, because they've gone everything from killing babies basically to
the useless eaters,
and then we get to the senior citizens, almost like the movie. What's it called? Greenfield.
Soil and Green.
Soil and Green.
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, Edward G. Robinson, one of his a very scary movie when you think about it.
Prescient.
Not too far from the truth, I must tell you. So,
well, Hollywood's been known to go ahead, Michael.
The UN's been pushing abortion and sterilization since 1954. And in their first population conference, they've been pushing this for decades, and this is one of the main concerns of the UN has been that the developed world has too many people and too much consumption has to be reduced, both of them. So that's been on the agenda. So this is a neo-Malthusian agenda, which means they want to control population.
Well, I hope they give up. I hope those people give up their cell phones and their TVs and everything else and let them go off grid first than anybody else. I want to bring in Josh Prince, who this is really important because Josh is running for a very important position. I think one of the most important positions in Pennsylvania, and that's for Commonwealth Court. And without having judges that we're not asking them to to be anything more than just use common sense, follow the Constitution, and that's it. And let people be the best versions of themselves. Josh, I think this is an interesting conversation. As someone who may possibly be a judge in the Commonwealth Court, how are you taking this discussion that we're having today?
Well, I think it's really important that the discussion be had. We know all too frequently these types of discussions get suppressed, especially on social media sites and such, and limited exposure. I mean, we've even seen that in relation to my own campaign. And the Facebook algorithms that preclude our posts and that from reaching. And so it's at all levels, and I'm not trying to take away from the financial aspects that you guys are discussing, but I do think these discussions are so important for our republic because so many people are unaware of these things, and the information just isn't out there, and there's so much competing information anymore. I mean, truly, our founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves today if they knew that the media would become so political and really another arm of the Democratic Party. And that's truly concerning to me.
One of the things, and Alan and I, we were in South Philly when I got him from the airport. We went and got Gino's Steaks, and we're driving through South Philly. And you think about the people that are working there. We saw men, trying to get the deliveries in between all these parked cars. And of course, if you've ever driven in South Philly, I do believe truck drivers get combat pay down there because just what they got to do. But all they're doing is they just want to get to work. They just want to do their job. They're not thinking about all this stuff that we're here. And it's so easily that these people get manipulated and had to a certain degree. And how do we get that message to that person who really makes up the bulk of the world's population? Most people are just got their heads down trying to exist. And they're not recognizing that this existence is being impacted by these decisions that people are making that are not allowing the world to be
self-appointed. They're self-appointed.
They're self-appointed, yeah, to a degree. So the question is, how do we get that message out to them?
We're doing it now. We're trying.
We're trying. We're trying to do one click at a time here. So Josh, you got a tough job out there, and I think you've been in all 67 counties, I believe.
Yes, we have.
You and Pat McCullough are Patricia's running for Supreme Court. I tell you, I've read some of her opinions, well-founded in common sense. That's the first thing that I get when I read her stuff is that, wow, this person really thinking in a common sense way. She wasn't stretching any points, trying to make a round peg get in a square hole, as a lot of these judges do. And you've done a lot of you've had a lot of hearings
he's a two-way advocate at the highest order, and I believe you're also on the board of counsel for the which one? I'm losing my mind. One of the firearms owners associations. Help me out with that, Josh.
I've been endorsed by Firearm Owners Against Crime as well as Gun Owners of America. I've spent a lot of my career defending Firearm Owners Against Crime in court, litigating issues that impact our Second Amendment rights, and doing what I would refer to as God's work. We really are under assault at all levels on all of our constitutional rights at this point. And while I am most well known for my Second Amendment advocacy, I've handled all forms of constitutional issues, equal protection, due process, religious freedom, freedom of speech, you name it, pretty much handled it. I was also at the tip of the spear fighting the COVID mandates. And in fact, many are unaware that the original COVID mandate here in Pennsylvania actually forced the closure of all law firms so no one could challenge the executive fiat. I was the attorney that filed a special petition with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court referred to as a King Bench application, where you basically ask the Supreme Court to immediately hear the case because of such paramount importance. And within 48 hours of filing that, then Governor Wolf had a first-of-a-lifetime epiphany, found law firms to be essential, allowed to reopen. We used the same mechanism to get gun dealers deemed.
You mean he allowed it to be open, but the only one he had allowed to be open was his family's cabinet-making business before that.
Well, that was always
correct.
Right.
That was always open. That was always essential. And we had blogged about that in a great deal. I thought that was very interesting. I don't know how cabinet making is essential, but it was.
Well, it was essential to him.
Yeah.
And his family. So.
And then.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and so It then went on from there. We started representing a bunch of small businesses that were being fined, like Taste of Sicily out in the Lebanon County area. They were fined close to $100,000 by the Wolf administration, and we were successful in getting all those fines thrown out. Then went on to represent a bunch of school boards, school officials who were receiving pressure from the Wolf administration about forced masking and vaccinations of our children. They said, we don't think this is our lane. So I agree, this is a parental rights issue. And so we provided them legal advice to push back. So I've spent my entire career defending our rights, and it's just astonishing to me that my primary opponent, who is endorsed by the GOP, has never stepped foot in a courtroom before. Not in a trial court, not in an appellate court.
Yeah,
I really don't know how someone's qualified to rule on an objection, never having made an objection.
Yeah, this is the frustrating thing with the establishment Republican Party, and of course we have the establishment Democratic Party too. But the establishment Republican Party is so out to lunch with some of the people that they've put up there. Not that these are bad people or anything, but the obvious is there with you because you've been in the trenches. You fight the fight out there for people, and so as Patricia. You couldn't ask for a better person to step right from the Commonwealth into the Supreme Court. She's got it all together in every stretch
Absolutely.
of the imagination. Now you got these.
I mean,
go ahead.
Just so the listeners know, I know Judge McCullough is going to try and get on later on. She's in oral argument right now. But just in the last year alone, she's upheld the Second Amendment on 4 occasions in her decisions, and I know that they were all my cases. She also was the judge who had ruled that Act 77, our mail-in balloting law, was unconstitutional under the Pennsylvania Constitution. That would later be overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in what I refer to as its political decisions instead of judicial decisions.
Well, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania is the most political Supreme Court that I've known in my memory.
Just ask Fulton County.
Yeah, just ask Fulton
Right.
County. Yes. So clearly,
exactly. And
so where do people go to get information about you and on Patricia?
So you can find us. Our website is princeforjustice.com. That's FOR, not the number 4. But if you go to princeforjustice.com is our website. You can also find us on Facebook. You can just type in Prince for Justice and find us, be able to like us. By liking us, it helps us have more breadth and share our articles further because it reaches your friends in that. So that's a really huge help. And then we're also on Instagram and Twitter as well. You can find us there. Judge McCullough's is McCullough, the number 4, SupremeCourt.com. And she's also on Facebook. You can find her Facebook account by just typing in McCullough for Supreme Court.
I want to bring in Sean from Queens. So we have Sean from Queens, who's now become a kind of a regular almost on this show to a degree. We've had him on.
Well, we've gone interstate because of him. We can confirm that. There may be some New Jersey. We've had California listeners.
We have some California listeners.
You got to be careful now. You'll be regulated.
Oh, my God.
You're crossing state borders.
Oh, my God. I didn't even think about that.
Check the Commerce Act.
So, Sean's someone who actually he's going to be here. He's
coming tomorrow.
He's coming tomorrow night, which is really great.
And we can announce it here because I don't think Chris is listening. Sean and I have the privilege of presenting Chris DeGaulle with his award tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to.
And he's
doing
definitely
that.
not expecting Sean to come down. I know that. But Sean, when I was talking to you and you were giving me your background, you had a story that basically your life began to change when you started flipping through the channels and you came across people like Chris and Rush Limbaugh and some of these other people, because you were just part of those people that with their heads down, just trying to exist day to day. And I think I think it's an interesting story that you had.
Well, I was always a long-time Rush listener, but I wasn't really deep into talk radio as far as of a host. I was just a Rush guy. And just before I even get into all this, Colonel Allen West, it's a pleasure.
Oh, stop.
No, it's an honor and it's a pleasure. Andy and Stan, thank you so much. Michael, are you still there, Michael?
No, Dr. Rechtenwald had to go, but we're gonna remind everyone about his book before we get off the air today.
Our intellectual lady that we had, is she still there? That's when we
Angelina, yes.
Angelina. Okay, Angelina.
Well, you'll get to meet Angelina tomorrow night too. So
I just wanted to make sure I got to say hi to everybody. But I was always a Rush guy, always. And Rush is the guy that really helped mold the way I think. When we moved to Pennsylvania, I found Chris in 2011 sitting on the Schuylkill early in the morning, and I was just flicking through, and I just came across this guy that sounded really interesting, didn't know who he was, and after 5 minutes, I was hooked. And I've been a follower and I've been a loyal listener and follower of Chris DeGaulle since 2011.
And now a Harumpher.
And I'm part of the Harumpher Society. I'm a founding member, and I'm always on there with Andy, commenting, conversating with people, trying to move the needle and just push the conversation forward. Chris did an amazing thing by setting up the Harumpher Society because he saw where everything's going, and I think he's really ahead of the curve with Harumpher Society.
Yeah, he was talking about that today.
Well, we're just extending you a free membership in the Steadfast
and
Loyal Alan West podcast, which you should definitely get on that one if you like some of those. Just look up. How do you get that, Alan? You go to Steadfast.
You can go to Steadfast and Loyal. You can go right to YouTube and Rumble. That's where you see all the episodes, and they're all archived and backdated. So have fun.
Yeah, there's some great interviews in there. Great interviews.
I'm looking forward to meeting you, Colonel Alan West, Sam, Andy, Chris, Eddie, Judge McCullough. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody tomorrow.
Bring your autograph
this
book.
Is real big.
Bring your autograph.
A lot of pictures, and a lot of autographs. It's going to be a wonderful time, and I really appreciate it, Andy. I think that our country is at a serious crossroads, and we have to be a major voice. Us conservatives, we're considered the silent majority. We can no longer be that silent majority and think that by going to the voting box on voting day will push things in the right direction. Ballot harvesting is among us. The Democrats have mastered it. We see that now. 2020 was the trial one. They implemented it in 2022. They're going to do it even better in 2024. I'm a New Yorker. I live in New York. I'm behind every line.
Would have never known you from New York.
I'm behind.
Are you first generation? When did your parents come here? How long?
No, my mother was born in New York. My father migrated from South Carolina when he was 18.
And where were they? So they've always been. Your family's history is always touched.
My family's history has always been, my dad's history, obviously, southern parts of the country. And my mom's history has always been in the north. I mean, my family goes back generations, in New York on my mother's side. I mean, I never really looked into the tree itself, but the roots are here. They're definitely here in New York and in South and North Carolina.
Yeah.
And that's, my dad's family and his side came up, over the years to the north.
Well, sometimes I feel New York is a foreign country, but that's another story.
Well, again, my dad is a Southern Republican. My mom is a true blue Democrat. She's a little nutty now because she has Trump derangement syndrome, and I've tried to enlighten her. Oh, well, she does. I mean, she watches MSNBC. It rotted her brain. And I tried to.
Boy, you're not going to get any turkey this year.
Well, look,
he will be the turkey.
Colonel, I love my mother dearly, but at the end of the day, she's been a victim of the psyop.
Yeah, you're right.
This is Operation Mockingbird 2.0. It exists. Mm-hmm. So the mainstream media on a daily basis in this 24/7 constant stream of media, they're just beating people over the head with a big 2x4. And if you don't get outside the mainstream media bubble, you're done. You're cooked. What happened with COVID is irreversible. And I think that the psychological damage that was done to people like my mother behind COVID and some of my friends behind COVID, it's irreversible. And I feel for them because they're going to live in a state of fear for the rest of their lives behind a plandemic, not a pandemic, a plandemic.
Yep.
Sean,
We're going to take we're going to take a quick station break and put our masks back on, and we'll be back we'll be back in a few seconds.
Sounds good.
WWDB 860 AM Philadelphia and WPEN HD2 Burlington, Philadelphia.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. We're back at the Don't Back Down show. The call-in number is 888-329-3306. If you want to join in conversation with Robert Bose, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. We'll even let you talk to Sean from Queens because that's another foreign country.
And intellectual Angelina Banks.
Oh, well, thank you.
Angelina Banks and Andy.
Non-intellectual Alan West.
And I want to bring in the fourth commissioner of Montgomery County, Pauline Braccio. So, Pauline, you have a question that you want to ask. Go ahead, Pauline.
Yes. Hi, everybody. So happy you took my call. I want to preface it by saying that while we're all focusing on global and national things that are going on and how we're being destroyed, I think people are forgetting that it actually starts at the local level. I live in Telmonton Township in Montgomery County, PA. And what's going on here is that we are being introduced to socialism, and we have a referendum question right now on the ballot for the primary, asking people to vote yes for home rule. And the person leading that charge is a self-admitted socialist. He's the president of the Bucksmont Democrat Socialist Party. Okay? And so I just think that there's not enough. I think this stuff is being slipped in on the local level because everybody's focused on the national and global levels. So can anyone speak to that? Because I really do. I live in Telmonton and we're going to go socialist.
Yeah.
And it's scaring me.
I'll take that because one of the things that I tried to focus on and really get Republicans to focus on when I was the state party chairman in Texas were the local level elections. We just had our cycle of local elections down there in Texas. City councils are very important, and school boards, without a doubt, the most important elected position in the country, but it is also the election that has the least amount of voter participation. So I think that we do have to start emphasizing those local elections and also county commissions, because when you talk about the execution of elections in the United States of America, it's not at the state level, it's not at the national level, even though they tried to usurp that authority, but elections are executed at the county level. All the decisions about processes and procedures are made at the county level through the county commission, and either you have a supervisor of elections or someone that's designated by that county commission to be in charge of that. So we have got to focus there. We've got to start running good, strong people. And the other thing we have to realize is that it's kind of like in baseball. I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, and I know the Philadelphia Phillies beat my Braves last year. I don't want to hear no junk from y'all. But, baseball has a system, and it's called a farm system. It starts out single A, double A, triple A, and up to the major leagues. We got to do better at the single A and the double A levels. We've got to focus at those local levels of election. And this is where the left always develops their bench. That's where they develop their team. They get them in at that level, city council, school board, county commission. Then they bump them up. Next thing you know, they're running for state house, state senate, whatever. Then they bump them up and they're running at the next level. So we have to have that same type of structure. So I would just submit that your state party needs to be focused that level down to the county and then also to the local level to make sure that we are training up the right type of candidates. And like I said, school board is so important because the indoctrination is happening there. We have got to make sure that the right type of policies, education policies, are being proliferated in our schools.
100%. But one of the things we also need to do is make sure that people are paying attention at the local levels. In my township, there's 15,000 registered voters. Township meetings, 7 people are there, 3 people watching online. School board meetings, 5 people there, 10 people watching online. So when we have these local elections and people want to talk about what's going on, because I've run for local government myself, no one even wants to have the conversation. Everyone's so stuck in their own little internal world on their phones with their apps or their activities, they don't even realize what's happening around them. And so I agree with you 100%. But at the same time, the other hand needs to be poking people awake and say, wake up. look up,
You know,
pay attention.
I guarantee you, Angelina, the people in your township can tell you who Donald Trump is. They can't tell you who's on their city council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or any of our
Well,
commissioners. You're right.
That's exactly, Angelina, that's exactly what's going on here. I'm in the North Penn School District in Talmenson Township, and the numbers you are giving are exactly right. We're getting more people to the county commissioners meetings, thank goodness, but still they have us hamstrung because we only get 2 minutes to talk. The Republican on the board does absolutely nothing to stretch that for us. So it's just been a really difficult. I've been going to these. The reason Stan calls me the fourth commissioner is I've been going to these meetings for more than 5 years now.
At least 5 years.
Yeah, and it's really.
In fact, I call you to make an appointment for. In fact, I call you when I want to make sure I get a seat.
Well,
I
she gets
call
more
you
done
first.
than the party of one.
I call Paulina. I say, hey, Paulina, are you going to the meeting? Oh, that was a dumb question. Yeah, you are. Could you save me a seat? Because and she will save me a seat. She puts my little nameplate on the seat, and that's
Yeah, but
that's
Joe Gale gets so upset because
he
it's always
throws,
his seat.
He throws stuff at the seat now.
Well, he's been under attack, and he is just a nasty thing. He is this Joe Gale. I
The
have not
party of
liked
The
him.
party of one. It gets nothing
Yeah,
done.
That's what he is. It's really, but I am really disgusted by. I went to a township meeting. I had stopped going. I went back. I go to the school board meetings, and the last time I was at the township meeting, the socialist people who are supporting this home rule thing, which has not been done anywhere since 40 years ago, they started screaming at me, literally screaming at me. I couldn't even get a word out. It was totally insane. And I thought to myself, these are the people who say, "Oh, hate has no home here." Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
All they showed me was their hate.
Well,
I'm sorry. I get very passionate about this. It's just really, it's scary for me. Okay, I have a daughter who's 27. She's a photographer. She will be, she's a photographer at tomorrow night's event. So
Yeah,
be
it's
sure
just-
you get your picture taken by her.
We've got it set up. So, one of the things that we have to remember, and as I've often said, politics is very local, and that's where it all starts. And one of the things I noticed in the last couple election cycles, the Democratic Party, which is not the Democratic Party of Jack Kennedy anymore, what they've done is made a concerted effort to take over control of judge of elections, all of the election precinct voting booths and everything else like that. They've done everything they can to take those over. The state has done everything they can to take the voting count out of the local precincts. Like, for example, when we used to have the absentee ballots, they would all come to the voting precinct and we would open up in front of everybody and everything would be counted. Today with the mail-in ballots, they should do the same thing with mail-in ballots, because mail-in ballots are nothing more than absentee ballots, really. And they should be
Except for one thing, they're centralized, they're counted,
And
in a
they're
central
unsolicited.
location.
And they're unsolicited.
Exactly.
Yep. And we know, Andy and I both know from the work we've done with the voter rolls in Pennsylvania, there is 250,000
Over 250,000 we can prove don't belong on there
the voter
anymore.
rolls in Pennsylvania minimum. In Montgomery County, it's close to almost 5,000 people on
You
there.
present?
No,
And
much more than that. You only presented the 5,000 on that. We gave you a short list.
Yeah, I presented to the commissioners in Montgomery County. I think Pauline, you were there as usual, and I presented it to them, and it was like, oh, thank you very much for that information, but we take care of these voter rolls, and
Yeah, they sure do.
and they sure do. Yeah, so
But
and
that's why county commission is so important.
Yes,
that's right, and that's why you can't be running for lieutenant governor, and you can't be running for governor, because then you're taking off the voter board voting what they had, the voter.
Board of Elections.
Board of Elections board,
Right.
because all the three commissioners are on it. So if you run for office, you're automatically office. So he's given free reign to that. Has never helped at all get cleaning the voter rolls. I know I'd been down in that office in 2 seconds and demanded those rolls be cleaned. So this is what we're faced with at almost every level.
Well, we're about to embark on a major voter registration roll cleansing effort in Bucks County, and we're going to combine with the Montgomery counterparts, and hopefully between those two counties,
We're going to
and
go to the
inspire
max.
some
on that.
others.
We're going to go to the max, and then hopefully we can carry it over into Pennsylvania so we can get rid of it. Because what they do is they take these voter rolls and they send these umpteen mail-in ballots to
Yes.
them. And then guess what? those mail-in ballots, because you remember Kathy Barnett, they did the solicitations after that, and they went to the voter's door and they said, "Does so and so live here?" Oh, we've never.
No, that's
seen
how
him.
this whole thing started. She discovered it.
She discovered this is what was happening. That these families that were living there, gee, that person hasn't lived here for years.
It's 100% true. As a local candidate, door knocking is a big part of your campaign. And as a committee person, I'm a committee person in my ward, and I know just from knocking on doors and dropping my literature that there are people to register to vote at businesses, which is illegal. There are
Or open fields.
There are people. There's homeowners
cemetery.
that
No, they vote separately to dead people. They're some of the best voters. They're very reliable.
Well, we have a couple of mail.
They're just dying to vote. Go ahead.
Oh, that's our first joke. Oh, you want to get me started? I have some for you today. But we have a write-in candidate for school board because it's so hard to just get people to run as Republicans where I live. That now we have a mail-in candidate, and we're reaching out in our wards trying to get people to be aware that we have this amazing candidate. Her name's Elena Hable, running for.
She's a write-in candidate.
She's a write-in candidate in Springfield Township, Montgomery County. Elena Hable. She's a kindergarten teacher. Who better to fix the system than somebody who's in the middle of it? And we're calling people, and they don't live in the township. They haven't lived at that address in years. They didn't request a mail-in ballot because right now we're talking to people with mail-in ballots, letting them know, and then we'll handle the write-ins at the polls on election day. But it's a real problem, and it's been going on.
But it's racist and disenfranchising what you're saying.
Oh, what? Which thing? Because everything is racist today.
I know, but it is. Because I said so.
It's insane. We're living in.
Aren't you identifying as black today?
As long as he's not identified as a woman.
No, but my pronouns are him, her.
Him, her.
I'm sticking with using.
I have to remember that one. But this is how ludicrous this thing is getting today. We were talking about reparations in California, and I'm going, wait a minute. Guess what? I'm identifying as black and moving to California because I want some of that $2 million that everybody's getting. I mean, this is beyond the pale. It's just so beyond the pale that it doesn't make rational thought. You would literally think you're making a comedy movie at times, and then you see the other thing. San Francisco, I know, Alan, you've been there many times. San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities I remember. My son worked out there in the San Francisco area, and it was just beautiful. It's gone to hell in a hay basket. They're boarding up offices and stores are closing. To open a supermarket costs millions and millions of dollars. The decision that Whole Foods made to close that supermarket because their fear of injury to their employees is just overwhelming.
It's happening in Philadelphia right now. You can't go to Center City.
Yeah, well, that I can speak to because almost every one of my commercial properties is filled with people that left Philadelphia to get out of Philadelphia.
I guess the suburbs are temporarily booming, but it's going to follow eventually to here too.
It will, as long as we keep on voting these same people.
Yeah, Robert.
Andy said.
Sean, go ahead.
Oh, Sean. Okay.
Sean.
Start the. Hey, can't you tell by his accent? He's from another.
It had a Washington twang for a second.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Scott Baio, didn't he just leave California?
Yes, I heard about that.
He just left.
Yeah.
I mean, California is the blueprint for everything not to do when it comes to green energy. If you want to know what not to do, just go to California.
Well, it's still agricultural. They say it's the land of fruits and nuts, right?
But the amazing thing is, challenge a progressive liberal to name one idea that has lasted through time. If you remember in the 1930s, that was the big push that, people were living in slums. Let's build these public housing projects. We're going to give everybody a place to live and it's going to be neat and clean. Well, 30 years later, there's not one of those buildings left. They've all been blown up and demolished because they turned into hotbeds of crime and everything else. So again, it was aimed at an overview without aiming at making people the best versions of themselves. If government changes its philosophy and stops talking about equality of outcome and starts recognizing our job is to give people equal opportunity to be the best version of themselves, guess what? We eliminate a lot of problems.
But that doesn't benefit government.
No, it doesn't.
Government has to have people that are dependent upon it, that are wedded to it, because if they solve these problems, then what's the purpose of their existence? The bottom line the government is supposed to do, and this goes back to Bastiat's book, The Law, is supposed to protect our life, our liberty, our property. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
All of this other stuff is just them trying to have economic enslavement of us and, bring them under their umbrella. And they're failing at protecting our life, our liberty, and our property. And if you don't believe me, just wait till tomorrow what's going to happen in the great state of Texas.
I can't imagine. I know you were telling me about some people in a certain area of Texas, which is difficult to get through, that people actually wear carpets on the bottom of their feet.
Yes. Out in West Texas.
You got to listen to this story.
The thing is down there, what you try to do, because we don't have enough drones, we don't have helicopters, whatever. So you actually try to foot track people. And that's what I was doing a couple of weeks ago, foot tracking illegal immigrants. And the infiltration routes are incredible. So this is what they've done. They start put carpeting on the bottom of their shoes so that you cannot track them. Now, it still leaves some type of disruption if you're going across, grass or brush, but mostly it's very hard to track someone when they put the carpeting on the bottom of their shoes. And when you go out to West Texas, which is, wide open desert, the Big Bend Mountains and everything, that's what you find. Is that these people who are really the gotaways, they don't want to be caught. This is where the bad actors are coming across.
These are the cartel people.
These are the cartel people, everything. And that's what they're doing. They're making it very hard to track them through the passes, through the mountains and what have you. So tomorrow, what's going to happen is that all of the assets, the Border Patrol and everything, is going to be focused on the respective ports of entry, being at El Paso, being at Laredo, Del Rio, Eagle Pass, McAllen, Brownsville. But everything in between is going to be wide open. And the reason why everything in between is going to be wide open because all the Border Patrol agents are being pulled to go to processing. So there's basically, tomorrow is the free-for-all. The sovereignty of the United States of America is done tomorrow. People are just going to pour across, and they're going to dissipate all throughout. And you want to talk about local level elections and things? They're going to end up here in Philadelphia. They're going to end up in New York, as they already are. They're going to end up everywhere across the United States.
And there's a cost to this that people have to realize. Your schools cost more money because then you have to educate these people. Health care, and they want to give free health care. So Americans are going to be hurting. The Democrats talk about, and Joe Biden loves it, that Republicans are going to cut Social Security. Well, my position is the Democrats have already been doing that through inflation and doing all these freebies and everything else. They've automatically cut your Social Security. So don't tell me that we're going to, because we're not. They've already done it. And the other thing is, you tell me about, the one person that lives in that area, her husband works. Well,
he's gone a lot.
She's by herself. And the next thing you know, they're knocking at the door.
Banging on the doors. And I mean, that's my dear friend telling me that specifically, but that's happening all throughout the border. Whereby the arrogance of people is that they're coming up in the middle of the night and they're demanding food, they're demanding water, they're demanding that you charge their cell phones. They're going out and cutting water lines. They're going out and cutting out fences. The ranchers down in South Texas are actually welding in ladders because they're sick and tired of the illegal immigrants cutting their fences, which means what? Their livestock. Mm-hmm. They escape out and just go all over. That's their livelihood. So they are actually facilitating people jumping over the fences.
Putting ladders.
Absolutely. You can go to our website, Steadfast and Loyal, and you can see that.
That's throwing your hands up in the air. I can't believe
but the bottom line, is who's helping them? The federal government's not doing anything. Greg Abbott, state of Texas, not doing anything. A lot of good photo ops and a lot of good interviews on Fox News. But no one's being told go back across the border. As a matter of fact, it costs the people, us in Texas, in Texas, $1,400 per illegal immigrant to put them on a bus and bus them, New York or whatever. $1,400 for each.
Hey, Colonel.
Yeah, illegal immigrant. Yes.
Go ahead, Sean.
This is Sean. This is Sean, Colonel. What do you think about the number of men? I mean,
they're totally bad. Single military-aged men. I know exactly what you're saying. Absolutely. These are not people. Yeah, these are not people seeking asylum. Okay, these are guys.
Let me go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
Let me go down this rabbit hole just a little bit with you guys. Have you guys ever read up on La Raza?
Yeah, La Raza.
Yes.
Okay.
The race.
So now, do we see we see long term of this infiltration and there being some kind of action taken by all these South American and Mexico, all these people coming into our country, taking back Texas, Mexico, Arizona, California. This La Raza thing is real. And we're watching, military-age men stream in across this border, and the cartels have warehouses full of military-grade weapons in our own country.
Yep.
That's been established already.
Well,
so you bring them in unarmed, and then you can arm them later. This is seriously dangerous.
Well, you bring up a great point, Sean, because this is how it all gets tied together. The cartels are being paid by China to take the fentanyl and manufacture and refine it and bring it across America to kill Americans. The cartels are being paid by people all across the globe to come and be brought across the border into the United States of America. The cartels make more money off of the human and sex trafficking than anything else, more than the drugs. So you can only take a drug one time. You can use a human over and over and over and over again. So we are aiding and abetting all of these things. And so with the billions upon billions of dollars that the cartel makes a month, okay, then they are able to become more, better resourced, better equipped. You know, I'm down there in Kenny County and we don't have drones. The cartel has drones. The cartel flying drugs over using drones. The cartel puts drones up so they can see where we are patrolling, so they can, divert people to different infiltration routes. This is a well-funded operation, and that's why I say this is an insurgency on our border. This is not just a business organization we're up against. We're up against a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization that is in control of a state, a nation. Mexico belongs to the cartels.
And so will we soon, the way you're describing it.
Well, we are. I mean, you don't hear the dirty little secret about the beheadings, the killings, and all of these things that are happening, not just on their side of the border, on our side of the border.
It doesn't make the news because there is no
Well,
news.
they don't want to have that out there because what the cartels are doing now, they see how lucrative this is, and so they're fighting amongst each other for territory. They want to expand their territory, not in Mexico, but also here.
It's almost like a mini version of the 1920s. In Chicago,
it is a mafia
with the different gangs that were there, and
Absolutely.
they were shooting up the city. It was, and we're basically going back to that.
And
because you see it here in Philadelphia with the gangs.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. The MS-13 gangs and everything. else.
So where's the FBI? They're chasing J6ers and people that stood.
No,
on the
they're infiltrating the Catholic Church.
Right. Wait a minute. That's where the real terrorists are. Because those people
believe in saving babies.
They don't forget about parents going to school board meetings.
Yeah, they just want to take care of their kids.
Right.
This is crazy stuff going on here.
They're going after January 6 people.
That's what I just said. Yeah.
But the amazing thing is
that was Malka Canner over here. She's joined us in here. So
if you just read a couple of days ago, they had an operation. The Border Patrol had an operation. They were going to go out through El Paso and try to pick up some of the bad elements. You know, they had intel on them. Mayorkas and the Homeland Security actually put out a memo telling people publicly that this operation was coming, but also warning the illegal immigrants where to go so that you could not be arrested. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about high crimes and misdemeanors. We're talking about treason. We're talking about an impeachable offense. And so I do not know how Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Alejandro Mayorkas, or even our Governor Greg Abbott can survive what is happening, the undermining of the sovereignty of the United States of America and the sovereignty of the state of Texas.
Because they're being supported by the corporatists and by the media. And while the corporatists own the media, there's what they say, there's 6 companies that own every single major media outlet in this country. And that's why they all speak the same song, sing the same song every single day about every single thing.
You know, I want to just switch the conversation for a minute and talk about Robert Kennedy Jr. Robert Kennedy Jr. has entered the Democratic field and run against Biden. In my lifetime, I shook hands with both Jack Kennedy when he was running for president. It was a real interesting story there. And then I had occasion to shake hands with his father, Robert Kennedy, down here at the Bellevue Stratford. My father used to give money to both parties back in the 60s because the Republican Party was still pretty strong. So he paid everybody off basically as he was
No. He contributed for better government. What is wrong with you?
That's my attorney talking, protecting my flag. I had
Stan, I
nothing
keep
to-
teaching you how to use
Yeah,
words.
I know. It's
Use
just
your
tough.
words.
Use your words.
So he had to take the ticket to get the VIP ticket. It was like $100. This was the big deal back then. So I go down. I'm in a room with the 50 other people, and
This is before $14 cheesesteaks.
this is before $14 cheesesteaks. Absolutely right. So I'm sitting there I'm the youngest person in the room. There's about 50 people in there, and then something changed. And Alan, I know you've experienced this, where somebody comes into the room and the electricity in that room changes. We know physically something's happened, and that's what happened. It changed, and I turned around, and there's Robert Kennedy Jr., a little guy, small, much smarter than me, and he puts his hand out and shakes hands with me and says, "How you doing, young man?" And I said, "I'm doing fine." Da 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 da. You know, he was like,
Hummada.
Yeah. And he spoke so softly and so charismatically. It was really interesting to listen to him. And it's an interesting thing what's going on. I mean, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s father actually supported and was one of the investigators for Joe McCarthy. In fact, Joe McCarthy and the Kennedy family were very close friends especially Jack Kennedy, because they were both pilots. He was a tail gunner, but they had war experiences together. They were both Irish. So there was a lot of connections there between the families. And that's how Robert Kennedy was involved. In fact, that was later used against him when he was taking on LBJ. But Robert Kennedy Jr. has a couple interesting books out there. There's part of me that likes the guy, and there's a part of me that he's trying to stay kind of true to the Democratic liberal philosophy.
He can't help himself. You could almost vote for him. He seems like he's an old school liberal.
But his positions on the vaccine was spot on. His positions on Ukraine, his positions on a lot of things are very common sense approach, and he's a deep thinker. Take the political part out of it, the fact he's a Democrat, lifelong Democratic family. What's your feeling about the man and where he is in relationship to
the bottom line is that I want to have someone as president who's going to honor their oath to the Constitution. And if you're not talking about the Constitution, I ain't listening to you. Okay, if you're not talking about reestablishing this understanding of federalism, if you're not talking about getting the federal government back in this right and proper and true box that the Constitution puts it into, I'm just not listening to you. And that's Republican and Democrat.
Right.
I think that we're in an era where political party means less. It's about your philosophy of governance and understanding the relationship of government to the individual citizen. That's what we need to be focused on.
the content of the character,
point.
the content of the character of the person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not personality, but the character of the person as far as being a servant in a constitutional republic. That's the thing that we need to be looking at. And that's why understanding civics is so doggone important. Look, I live in a state where we're still under COVID emergency order.
No way. We're not even that here.
We eliminated it here.
If I'm lying, strike me dead, Lord.
And we're in the communist
I'm still
wealth
here.
of Pennsylvania.
And I'm still here.
I can't believe that. This is the communist wealth of Pennsylvania.
The World Health Organization has said that the pandemic is over, but we're still under that. And so
Where's
that's why,
Greg Abbott on that one?
well, he is the one that's been doing it. He is the one that's been re-upping unconstitutionally based upon what the Texas state constitution says. The governor, after 30 days, has to go to the legislature to extend any emergency order. He's just bypassed the legislature. So what I'm saying is it's not about Republican or Democrat anymore. It's about understanding this simple little doggone thing that I carry with me wherever I go.
Look at that.
Okay.
He's got it.
And if we don't get back to this, we're done. We're done. And because there are Republicans that support the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, Spectre, they probably got little white pussycats in their daggum lap. All of this and does that. We have got to be smarter as an electorate. And that's why, again, it comes back to what Angelina said, is that we have got to get this message out to people so they understand. People, like you say, in their gut, they know something's not right, but we cannot continue to be a cult of personality voting body.
Yeah. Well, I've made that argument to people when they talk about Trump, and I'm not talking about whether you like him or dislike him. I'm saying I'm looking at a checklist of things that he's
Yes.
accomplished. And when I go down the checklist, there's a hell of a lot more check things that I like that he's done related to the Constitution as opposed to not. So, so he's a New Yorker, and no offense, Sean, but New Yorkers are in your face automatically.
Yeah, we Southerners know that.
And the other thing is, when you think about it, Trump was a developer in New York. He had to deal with unions that would throw you off a building. He had to deal with corrupt politicians, corrupt inspectors. Every level of government in New York has been corrupt. So he had to be a no-nonsense guy. He's used to being pushed around, and he fights back. He never gives in.
And I do not mind fighting back. But we had a saying in the military: you don't fight hard, you fight smart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key thing. You don't always open yourself and present the gaps by which you can be exploited. And I think that was some of the things he did. If Donald Trump was sitting right across from me right now, this is what I would say to him. You never did understand what the bureaucratic administrative state was.
He knows now.
You did not go 5 or 6 or 7 levels deep into eradicating a lot of people that are there. You did not go back and look at all of these generals that had been elevated during the Obama administration and get rid of those generals and get the right type of generals in there.
Oh my God, the generals we have now, I don't think they could fight their way out of a paper.
Joke.
I don't think they could fight a way out of a paper bag.
But see, when Barack Obama came in, he got rid of the generals that were on his team.
That's why he wanted to get rid of General Flynn.
Absolutely.
Now we have thoroughly modern millions.
And so that's why we have to once again get back to understanding constitutional
That was a good one, Andy.
Yeah,
that
I didn't make that up. I just said it right.
Hey, guys, real quick, guys, regarding Trump and COVID. Trump will have to get out in front. I thought the Democrats were going to try to spin it where they were going to blame COVID on Trump. Ron DeSantis is doing a pretty good job basically saying, I was out ahead of this. You and your administration were way behind the 8 ball. Trump still hasn't come out and said,
I know that. And I got to tell you exactly where Andy and I have been on that type of thing too, saying we can't accept. I mean, he hates. First off, Trump has made a point in his books and everything. He never admits he makes a mistake. Number one, it's just not in his bailiwick because that's a sign of weakness to him. And
but he can fix it. All he has to do is say, "Listen."
All he has to do is say, "Fauci told me." That's all.
Well, he can do that. No, he can do that. But
it's all water under the bridge at this point. We need some leadership back in this country, and and the one thing that conservatives have managed to do better than anything else is be a circular firing squad. Whereas whatever else you say about the Democrats, they always rally on the same side. And I want to bring Liz Deal on now, Stan. But before we turn to Liz, I want to put out a plug for Right for Bucks, which is the organization led in Bucks County by Andy Meehan.
Great organization. Great people. I tell you, just regular Americans.
And I want to direct everyone to the rightforbucks.com. It's rightforbucks.com website. And I implore you to read the special report concerning the Bucks County Republican Committee. Andy Meehan's about to unleash the wrath of Right for Bucks on them. And I'm not going to say any more because we're going to have Andy on next week to actually talk about this. But you need to go to the website and read the special report.
And if you come to the event tomorrow night, you'll be able to meet Andy Meehan and
not only meet him, but he's going to see him perform.
But he is going to perform. I've asked him to just be a little bit more cautious on the parody songs that he has, but he has some great rock and roll. Right for Bucks band. He's got some great parody songs that you'll be splitting a gut. So you definitely want to join in that. That's going to be a great show.
And one last thing, the Trump store.
The Trump store.
We have people lined up to get in to hear the show now. Lisa V was telling me this. No, it's no lie.
No lie. No,
it might be a lie because I'm not there and I can't see it, but I trust Lisa V.
But we're going to actually see if we can do a show from there, so people can come in and do that. But they've got all kind of great T-shirts and everything else, but it's a great store.
They're at 2060 Street Road in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, and it's the Trump store. You can go to TrumpStorePA.com, TrumpStorePA.com, buy online. And I think it's confirmed now that Biden No More in 24 line is coming out.
The Biden No More in 24 line is coming out. You can get large, medium, and small.
Extra large.
Extra large. For those who have a big head, It'll definitely fit. All right. Elizabeth Thiel, go ahead, Liz. How you doing today? Thank you for joining
Hi.
and calling in.
Hi, Stan. Hi, Andy.
Hello,
It's always
Liz.
so great to hear the two of you together. You're like, I don't want to say frickin' frack, but you really bounce off each other. I
Now,
love you
who's
guys.
frickin', who's frack? That's what I want to know.
As long as you didn't say Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Oh my gosh! And hi, so I'm from New York, but I dialed the phone
How you
because
doing?
I'm sorry. Hi, I'm very excited to meet Colonel West. I'm a fan, and I just want to sir, nice to meet you, and it's an honor. And I really agree with everything. Your conversations are all over. I can't even remember, but the commissioners to me are the most important seats. And I'm working really hard on the sites that I run to, stand up for the commissioners that we need and speak against the ones we don't, like Joe Gale. And so thank you for speaking up about that and just everything that you do, sir. My question is, I don't know if you have an answer, but, I'm watching busfuls of people, illegals come into my small town, which is about 45 minutes north of Philadelphia. And so we don't have sanctuary cities up here, but yet we're getting busfuls, and I'm watching them at nighttime come off of the bus, not every night, but one time. Doug Mastriano posted all about that. How is this happening when we're not sanctuary cities? They're saying they're filled in Philadelphia, so they're sending them up here. It's just really, really bad. In fact, they have a whole apartment complex dedicated, waiting for them. So they're like,
But you have to pay your rent, don't you, Liz?
But me?
Yeah.
I own my.
Well, people have to pay their own way.
You paid your mortgage.
Well, this is exactly what you see happening. And because we have a lack of courage with, our governor in the state of Texas to just pay a very short fee to bust them back across the Rio Grande, they're being sent to New York. And guess what Eric Adams is doing? He's pushing them out into the suburbs. Or they come up here to Philadelphia. They're being pushed out into the suburbs because this is about destabilizing the suburban areas, which are maybe stronger red voting areas, and pushing on your economic collapse. So I tell you what you need to do. If you have a red county commission, they need to vote for a resolution that, number one, we're not a sanctuary city. Number two, we're not accepting illegal immigrants, and we will, transport them out of here back to somewhere else. We'll pick a spot, but we're not going to allow that to happen. This is unconstitutional, what's being done. It is very clear in the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, the responsibility of the federal government. Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3 of the Constitution, what states can do if actually invaded. 5 to 7 million people is an invasion. It is not people coming over here to have a good time, not to go to Disneyland or to Disney World or Six Flags over Texas. This is an invasion. And so we need to start standing up on the rule of law. And furthermore, this is something that I think we should do. Now that Alvin Bragg in the city of New York has shown that a local level district attorney can bring an indictment against a presidential candidate and a former president, then why don't we have Red County local level district attorneys bring indictments against Joe Biden for failure to do what he is supposed to do in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution.
How about Mayorkas? It could be
And you can, all of them.
Yellen, all of them.
Bring indictments against them because and use the same precedent that they're using. Because if not, if we just sit around and allow this to happen, in 18 months, folks, if in 2.5 years we've seen 5 to 7 million, in another 18 months, how many more will there be?
Probably double that. There's probably double that.
Yeah.
And that's just absolutely,
it's unconscionable.
It's totally unconscionable. And it really shows you that our leaders do not care about us.
Well, they're not leaders.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
That's right.
But all three branches have been homogenized into one. They don't jealously guard their power like they're supposed to.
And I hate to say it, what's going to happen is there's going to be one of these illegals, one of these gang members is going to come up and it's going to attack and hurt one of their family members or something like that. Then there's going to be a big epiphany, like the one woman who was all for defund the police, and then she had her car broken in a couple times, and now she's all for wants more police officers. So again, any progressive liberal idea that comes up and they push it out there eventually turns to dust at some point in time because it's not steeped in any kind of common sense or any kind of practical knowledge of
Yeah.
history.
Just
and
remember
it fails.
the guy Francisco Oropesa, who murdered the illegal, I hate to say that, they were here illegally, Honduran family in Cleveland, Texas. Oropesa had been deported 4 or 5 times. Now, how is someone that is here illegally able to get a semi-automatic weapon? Period.
Well,
Okay.
I know.
Let alone be mad because you tell them to stop shooting it at night.
Yes,
Yeah.
but here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize. In that county, San Jacinto County, because people are saying, where are the police? Well, how come they couldn't get there? In San Jacinto County, at that time, he had 3 sheriff deputies on call to cover a 700 square mile county.
That's a big area.
See, that's what is happening when we are not able to properly protect the American people or citizens in whatever respective state.
While
You
trying
know-
to take our weapons from us.
While trying to
you
take
know,
our weapons from us.
Sean is very familiar with the subway system in New York, and we're talking
Yes,
about
I
this. It's been him and I and Andy were talking about this Neely situation that
Mhm.
occurred, and there you have a guy that was arrested at least 40 times.
44.
Sean? 44
Amazing.
times.
Well,
Injured.
he assaulted 3 women. He has 4 assault charges. He assaulted 3 women. Now, this man should not have been on the street. The system failed everybody. here.
Alvin Bragg.
If he, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, like I tell a lot of people who are talking about the race thing, you can't talk about race in this situation. It has nothing to do with it. The system failed everybody. The system allowed Neely to be on the street. The system made it very uncomfortable and scary for people to ride the subway because of people like Neely. Now, like I told some of my race baiting friends, the mayor's black. No, I gotta tell them. The mayor's black. The commissioner is black. The DA is black. You have a 70% black minority police force. The inspectors, deputy inspectors, they're black and Hispanic. City council, majority black. Black and minorities run this city. So if DA Braggs will not charge Daniel Penny, which I think he made a mistake intervening the way he did, if this was just a verbal nuisance situation, you can't bring race into it because the people who aren't charging Daniel Penny are not white people. It's black people run this city at the end of the day.
Except when they're
special
police,
kind of
then they're white supremacists.
Well, again, I mean, you got people who are just, as Rush would always say, skulls full of mush. And right now, this city is, look, guys, I'm telling you, this city is bugging out every night. My daughter, she works in Manhattan. She has to ride the train to work. I worry about her. My wife worries about her because things are going crazy and they're making it a police issue. The police have nothing to do with this. Like I told everybody, I saw what Daniel Penny was trying to do. He was trying to put the guy to sleep, rockabye baby, put him to sleep, not permanently, just for a little bit. But he didn't use the technique properly the way the Marines taught him. If you look, his right hand is on top of his head, not behind his head at the base of his brain, where you can apply the pressure and cut off the blood circulation to the brain, knock the guy out in 10 to 12 seconds. That's what he was trying to do, and he did it wrong, and ultimately possibly caused this man to die because he suffocated.
But my feeling is the man died because the system didn't do it right. Those
system failed everybody.
those nameless bureaucrats, those nameless DAs, those people that allowed this man to be on the street, they're responsible for his death because he shouldn't have been on the street doing these things that he does in the subway and creating that fear. And of course, Penny.
Well, yeah. At what point are you fearful for your life or the well-being of others? And Sean really raised this debate to another level in the Harumph Society yesterday, and we've all been going back and forth about it. He made me think deeply about it. We do have an obligation to protect ourselves. Not only an obligation, natural law right, responsibility to protect ourselves and others from imminent harm. When is it that some lunatic dancing around in a train threatening people, saying he doesn't care if he gets arrested and go to jail for the rest of his life, when do they become dangerous enough to intervene? And then when somebody actually does that, and yes, you're probably right, Sean, the man shouldn't be dead. He shouldn't be dead. But the wrong person's being charged. And I think the people who run the city and walked away from broken windows policing, which Giuliani brought in, that made New York not only livable, but actually a safe place, They've destroyed this city, and then the victims are the people that have to stand up for others in the first place. It never should have happened. Where was the policing in that subway? New York was one of the safest cities going until this nonsense started about 8 years ago.
I know, Andy, but Andy, I can't, like, when that happens to me on the train, I'm just at a state of readiness, and I'm just ready.
But you're trained. You're different. What about your daughter? What is she supposed to do?
My daughter, I've given her a nice little buddy that's legal, and I've told her what she needs to do. Look, she's 19, and at the end of the day, she's in the city, she's riding the train, and we talk to her every day, me and my wife, and we are fearful. We are fearful for her life right now. But you gotta understand, until I see a video of this man, in this instance, physically harming someone, you can't just put your hands on people today. Not in New York City. You can't do it. It's just
unless you're a criminal.
No. It's just the way it is. I'm talking about this in regular life.
The interesting thing.
I've been threatened. I've been threatened on the train. When I was in Fulton Street with my wife, this guy told me he wanted to F me up. I didn't even know who he was. Yeah. And again, I had my pilots on, I had my knuckle busters on, and I'm like, babe, this will take 2 seconds. Give me a minute. But I couldn't do that because the man didn't touch me, but he did verbally threaten me. And I'm looking at him, and it's bad. It really is bad out here.
Well,
but I can't put my hands on him.
Liz. Hold on. Go ahead, Liz.
Just wanted to say this is why we need judges like Judge McCullough, who, I don't know if she's allowed to say it, but she loves the Lord and she brings everything to him. And if we're going to leave God out of everything and try to do it ourselves, we're really just not going to win. She is a Second Amendment advocate that also loves the Lord. So in unison of the two is really the only way we're going to win. We do have to come together and pray for our kids' protection. And we do have to start preaching at the pulpit without losing our 501c.
Liz, you must have a direct line to the Lord because Judge McCullough just came on the line.
I want to bring her on because I want to bring her on before this show's over. So because I want to give her a chance. Patricia, Pat McCullough, how you doing, Judge?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you today?
Well, introduce you here to Lieutenant Colonel Alan West.
Hello, Judge.
I've told them all about you. And
hello, Lieutenant Colonel. Wow.
He wants you to move to Texas.
Yeah, he wants you to move to Texas.
If you got guns, you can come.
And I'm going to take the next train.
I guess I'm going to.
Got milk, got guns.
Go ahead, Patrice. Go ahead. Too many people stepping on the line.
Have more sunshine.
Yeah, they do have a lot. Alan was complaining this morning when he got in; it was too cold for him. He had a wool coat on, and everything else. He had gloves on. So
yeah. Well.
Anyhow,
you'll get used to that here.
Yeah. So you're going to be there tomorrow night, I believe. So you'll have a chance to meet the colonel. How's your campaign going? I know you have to be careful with what you said. So I want to just bring us up to date. And it sounds like you're having an impact out there. I hope people recognize that.
Well, thank you. I've gone everywhere I can possibly physically get to, and I think it's a good sign when I don't know what day it is. That's a good sign in the campaigning. So that's about where I am right now. But I have had the chance to meet a lot of Pennsylvania citizens and voters who just really are concerned about their constitutional rights. And I hope that at least it's been encouraging to them to hear about some of the cases. And for me to say, don't get discouraged, continue to stand for what you know is truth. And it's one day at a time.
Are you still running the complaint department at the Commonwealth Court? Because I got the decision yesterday in my case and I have a complaint to register.
I can't do anything for you.
I'm only joking. I would never put you in that position.
But I do want to ask you a question, and I'm sure in your many years of being a judge, you've probably had cases similar to what Donald Trump went through with the person he said, she say. In cases you had similar to that, where have you found your rulings generally came from, or how did those cases go on ones you had similar to Donald Trump's case?
Well, there were a lot of cases that came through the court, and I talked to you about the ones I was on. The 2020 case was not his case. It was congressman's case who filed to stop the certification because of the unconstitutional passage of the mail-in ballot law. And we had a similar case last year at the appellate level. I mean, we have original jurisdiction where we sit as trial judges, and that's what I did in 2020 by ordering the governor to stop certifying the congressional and the presidential election. But then last year, we also said the mail-in ballot law was unconstitutionally passed, but the Supreme Court held otherwise. Now, we had cases where people were challenging ballots that had not been dated. That doesn't even take testimony because you can just look at the ballot itself, and it was a question of applying the statutory language, which requires that they be dated. Another case had to do with whether they were actually voting at the satellite offices. That was my case in Philadelphia, one of the satellite offices. What's interesting is in that case, there was $10 million given by a Chicago nonprofit to Philadelphia to set up the satellite offices to allow for early, they kind of wasn't voting, and I said, put a picture in my opinion of from a newspaper article of a city councilman. It said, here's the caption, city councilman votes at satellite office. And what he was doing was filling out a mail-in ballot. And so I said, that's voting. But again, you're looking at the exactly what was going on there. One case we had as an argued case, an attorney was before us, and one of the judges asked, "Counsel, you don't have any evidence of fraud, do you?" And the attorney's response was that, "No, Your Honor, how can we have any evidence when we're not allowed into the polls?" Because it involved the question of whether they were, restrictions were being imposed on how close they could get. And some of them were so far away by the footage that they had to honor that they couldn't see. That's what they were saying. They could not see what was being transacted by the people who were working those.
It's the ultimate catch-22. You can't get the evidence, but you have to have the evidence before you can get a hearing, and that's been driving me crazy since Act 77 became the law.
And you can't tell me that these regulations are designed that way.
They are, though.
They are. They're designed that way for that purpose, so you can never get your grips around it.
Or let's put it this way: they're enforced that way. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely insane, and we can't ask Judge McCullough to talk about what may come up in the future. But just what she's mentioned here is enough to drive you crazy. I mean, you can't win for losing. It's insane, actually.
Well, these were regulations that were put in because of the COVID concerns, and so they were saying you have to stand so many feet away from the poll workers. However, the people who were working in those election areas, they were near each other, but it was that they weren't allowing them to be within so many feet. One of our judges entered an order reducing the amount of feet that they had to stand away from them. But I just practically speaking, and aside from any cases, if anyone's worked